Testing, testing. Closed caption testing.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, what's that?
I thought Jenny was on vacation, but I could be wrong.
Tell me when I do it, what's going on.
I could have sworn she said she was on vacation.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 6 o'clock. If we could stand, well, the roll has been taken. I welcome everyone, and let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll go to item 3 on the agenda to review, revise, and approve the agenda. Are there any changes or requests? If there are none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as written? Trustee Wake, seconded by Trustee Vice Chair Afgaris. Are there any public comments on the agenda items? Seeing none, we'll have a vote. All in favor, raise their hand. Agreed by all trustees present. Next, item 4, we'll approve the minutes. The first set of minutes is for the Board of Trustees special meeting that was held on July 30th. Is there a motion to approve these minutes? Trustee Wake, a second. Trustee Wallach. Any public comments on the minutes for the special meeting? Seeing none, all that approve these minutes, please raise your hand. Unanimous for all members present. The next item is the minutes for the Board of Trustees regular board meeting, also held on July 30th. Is there a motion to approve these? Ann Wake, a second. Trustee Witt. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the regular board minutes, please raise your hand. It's unanimous for all trustees present. We have written correspondence from the prior meeting, but I don't believe there was any for this meeting. And it's time now for any public comment for non-agenda items. The public comment portion of the meeting is set aside for the public to address the board as a body, but it is not a time for board response or for the public to ask questions. Please do not infringe on the right to privacy of others, and please sign in and spell your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and the chair may interrupt or terminate an individual speaker if the statements are out of order, if they're over 3 minutes, or are directed to an individual. Thank you.
My name is Rachel Herring. It's spelled RACHAELHERYNK. I am speaking again regarding bus stops in our neighborhood around Cold Spring School. Currently, our neighborhood is presented with 2 bus stop options for elementary students attending Chief Charlo. Stops at Cold Spring Elementary and Meadow Hill Middle School, both located on the northern end of our neighborhood. Our neighborhood does not have a bus route, and this requires some children to walk 5 to 8 blocks to access a bus stop. Given this distance, most students are driven either to the bus stop or to school, which places a strain on families to get their children to school. We have proposed adding a bus stop to improve students' access to busing in our neighborhood. Our bus stop request was denied. Previous reasons included concerns about the grade and snow plowing. Both special education buses and the high school bus have routes through our neighborhood, and I have trouble understanding why those are barriers to an elementary school bus, but not other MCPS buses. Most recently, our request was denied, stating that adding a stop or route to our neighborhood would reduce efficiency of bus routes and be enough for an additional charge to apply. Every other neighborhood has a bus route that has incurred a cost, but our neighborhood is denied a route because it incurs a cost. It is not fair that we are denied a basic service that every eligible neighborhood has. For comparison, the Lower Rattlesnake neighborhood surrounding the closed Prescott School has a bus route. The closed school is not used as a bus stop as it is in our neighborhood. I would like to invite all of you to walk in our neighborhood so you can see the challenges students face accessing the 2 stops. On Thursday morning at 7 a.m., my kids and I will be at Meadow Hill Middle School, and you are welcome to join us. If that time doesn't work for you, I'm happy to meet another time, and you can email me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, it's time for announcements from the superintendent. Superintendent Hill will report on items of interest.
Well, I've got quite a list. I'm just kidding. We are getting ready to start school. It is just an incredibly busy time of year. We'll be sending out a fair amount of messaging to staff and families, letting them know what's coming up, what to expect. So lots of meetings. We were meeting with our administrative teams this week and lining out a vision for what we're setting our sights on for the coming school year. I don't know if anybody noticed the screen in the room, or maybe a couple of them, but we will, it's been a year in the works of trying to move towards Board Docs, which is an electronic portal for running and organizing board meetings. And so this is one component of making that happen. We ran into some logistical challenges and with vendors and being able to get the projectors and screens, but we're underway. And so thanks to Brian and his team for helping to make that happen. Tracy's been getting trained up in Board Docs, and we're building our templates and uploading all of our prior minutes. And at some point in the near future, we will be inviting board members to do a training so that you see and understand how it works, and we'll be providing trustees a device that they will be able to log in and see and follow along and have all of their materials available to them and to the public. So we're excited about that. And that's it for today.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, the consent agenda. In accordance with school board meeting procedures, the board approves the use of a consent agenda to expedite business at a regular monthly meeting. These items deal with perfunctory routine matters often. Any item on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda upon request by any trustee. Does anyone want to move anything from the consent agenda? If not, item number 1, Pat McHugh, perhaps you can explain the approval of disposal of records.
Oh, it's consent agenda.
Oh, you just say it out loud was all I was going to ask. Just that it's for both elementary and secondary.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, this is a regular item for the disposal of records, both elementary and secondary.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve this consent agenda? Vice Chair Afgaris and seconded by Trustee Wake. Is there any no board discussion? So is there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, all those who approve disposal of these records, please raise your hand. Approved by all trustees present. New business, and now, Mr. McHugh, you have more to do. We'll discuss the 2024 budget.
All right, thank you. And for those of the trustees who have been on the board, they know this isn't new business. It's very familiar. And but it's also a real important point in the year where the board, by August 20th, needs to adopt budgets and set levies. And so the general fund is the fund we primarily talk about. It's the one that we really dove into going back to the fall of last year with our budget levy committee. And thank you to that committee for the work that they did. And then this is sort of the culmination of that work. And really tonight it's just a preview of what you'll see next week on the 20th when you formally adopt budgets. So it's a familiarization with those documents. So I'll jump right in. The general fund, there really isn't any levies to set that haven't already been either voted on or determined by state statute. The funding also is pretty much set in place. So this is a recap of where we're at, beginning on page 16 for the elementary. I'm just going to highlight the changes. There's quite a bit of information on the website that sort of outlines how we got to this point. But what's different that I'll point out on page 16 is you'll see on the second line under revenue increase, I show the amount that we voted in parentheses, and that's different from the amount that's carried over to the right side. And so from the point that we had our community vote on that levy, the amount that we could actually levy to get to max budget decreased. So the 105 that's been approved, the amount in excess of 75 is still approved, and it's still something we can use for 5 years going forward. So it's not a lost effort there. But really the change was tied primarily to the numbers for charter schools being reported and being part of the funding calculation. The other change also relates to the charter school. You'll see I peeled out a portion of the increased budget, the 141,513. That amount relates to the basic entitlement for charter schools, which we talked about before as helping to fund the Teach Academy and part of the Connect Academy to the extent middle school students participate. So then we work with that net balance, that 683, which is still really close to what the board looked at in March, and right where the Budget and Levy Committee looked at it in April. There is a minor change in the calculation of step increases that happened after the board meeting that the Budget and Levy Committee saw. But otherwise, those first category expenditure increases are really salary and benefit staffing type expenditures. That makes up a $4.5 million add to the budget. Significantly, and this was under option C, under the Budget and Levy Committee work that was done, the $1 million sped staffing to build into the budget. So there's a significant boost that we talked about in staffing that was Medicaid funded that we had to pick up in the general fund. So, and then the behavioral interventionist at 750,000. That's going to be funded with the safety levy that's listed down below as a savings and an offset. The next category is other obligations, and these are SRO costs, liability insurance, work comp credit that we need to build into the budget, certainly not significant in comparison, and then our reduction, savings, and offsets that help us balance, which is the bigger numbers. You first have the enrollment-based reductions and the additional reductions, then the reduction in office staff. So you see initially quite a few reductions, then we're shifting expenditures to other sources, and then the change in the allocation between the elementary and the high school from 5842 to 5545. And then significantly the $1.5 million of the safety levy, which will cover general fund expenditures to help balance the general fund. The expenditures will be safety related. We talked a lot about that. And then the two changes that are new here at the bottom, the Adjust Idea B allowance, those are federal funds for SPED services. We were moving 350,000 of that, those Idea B, those federal funds to help out in the elementary, but that's been adjusted to 125. So our updated budget numbers, along with the tuition funding, we were at 350, we're now at 550. And the tuition funding reflects the excess special ed costs and our ability to permissively levy excess special ed costs. So we've done a really detailed analysis, and there's quite a bit of room there. And we feel like given that $1 million amount that we need to build into the budget, it really makes sense to look more towards the tuition fund. It was also a way to really help out the high school, because the Idea B allowance in particular was reliance upon the high school side getting less of those federal funds. And there are always consequences to making that shift, and so this sort of minimized those consequences. So with at the end of the day, the general fund, as estimated, is balanced, and that's where we need to be on the elementary side. If it's okay, I can jump to the high school. High school, similar sort of updates to the revenue side, but again, it's very much enrollment-driven. It's state-calculated, formula-driven, both in terms of the revenue and in terms of the calculation. You'll see on the high school side, this is sort of a nuance that you might not pick up, but the highest budget without the vote plus the over-base voted levy gets us to a proposed adopted budget, and it says at maximum, but that's not correct. So we'll be slightly less than maximum budget in the high school district. And here we levied $403,000. That amount was set. We notified staff, and then the amount was slightly more than that. Again, partly tied to charter schools, the enrollment associated with charter schools. So we ran with our initially advertised levy of $403,000, which thankfully passed on the high school side. Down below the basic entitlement for charter schools, this is the portion of the school funding formula that's tied to the students that we're anticipating for the Connect Academy. So that's a pretty large basic entitlement that we're using to provide and hire certified staffing to support that program. Then you'll see so it's quite a bit more to work with, the 1.8 million in the high school than in the elementary. But again, we work with salary and benefit obligations. That's the first category, and again, the largest category. And we have those components, certified steps. Those are the certified step increases, the contractual increases for MEA. The lane movement, we won't know exactly that amount till September, so that's an estimate. The ESSER amount to build into the budget, and then the MMCEO steps and longevity increase along with our estimate of pay increases. Those are the big items there. Other obligations are similar to the elementary, plus student athletic and activity travel, and this is part of recalibrating the budget to get to where expenditures are at. And so that's an important increase. The change in allocation, it says from 5545 to 5842, that should be flip-flopped. The 5842, it just means when we have a salary or an expenditure that benefits the elementary and the high school, we allocate that 58% elementary, 42 high school. We're shifting to 55 elementary, 45 high school, really based primarily on enrollment, and I know most of you know this.
It on one time only. This is you building it in. And I guess sort of the greater question of this is the general fund or the general fund budget. The fact that it's only $200,000 in the high school, that money is out, that liability is out somewhere else, right? Like, we are going to have more costs than that.
Yeah, what I'm showing there, and it doesn't have the full description, is the amount that was picked up by one-time only funds or only sources. But you're totally right, because the high school, we for both districts, we had options A, B, and C. The high school didn't pass the safety levy, but I still think we had they passed the safety levy under option C, the high school, I might be wrong here. No, we were still at 200,000. So that was the, no, wait a sec. We were going to go to 400,000. So there's costs that that we have to pick up that are sped-related costs, and the tuition fund through this excess sped levy is where we'll pick up part of that cost. So we're both building 200,000 into the budget, and we're building out an increase in the funding source from the tuition fund to offset additional costs. Yeah.
But still not enough. I guess I don't want to give people the impression like, oh, look, this budget's balanced. And then here we are in March and we're like, oh, we're short again. Like, there's still liabilities out there that we haven't built in yet, right? Like, well, and there's also extra revenue in the sense of like over on the tuition funding, including preschool, we could legally put that up to like $1 million, right? Or somewhere in that realm. So there's things that still just aren't on here.
I would say that's right. It goes back to what Jeff was saying, because we we're trying to capture through some conservative estimates of expenditures what the cost is going to be. What's predictable in special ed is we're going to spend more if you look historically at what we've done. And we don't know what students might come in, what IEPs might happen. So that's probably fair, yeah.
It's my last maybe two parts. So
Yeah.
the less funding to basic entitlement to the charter schools. So this was the vote, we talked about giving them sort of seed starter money, right?
Yeah.
And that's this. Their budgets aren't, because they're also going to get, they're not going to get A and B until next year, but they're going to get basic entitlement this year, right?
Right.
And that's somewhere else.
It's here,
Well, then why is it a negative?
because it's added in the highest budget without a vote up above. So our highest budget without a vote, part of it relates to our estimate of students that are charter school students. So we had those thresholds, the 21, the 70, the 40. And so when we provided the OPI with those estimates, that allowed the max budget to get boosted by the basic entitlement amount, but not by per A and B. So it's kind of odd, because what the OPI had to do was not incorporate the A and B into the A and B portion of the funding formula, but they had to say, all right, you're going to meet those thresholds, which gives you a basic entitlement. And so when we look at the formula, I can go back and see that we have, like in the elementary, we have 117,000 plus 58,000 of basic entitlement. I only took 141, which is 80%. That's the portion of the basic entitlement for charter schools that's part of the base budget. Blah, 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 blah. But that's what it is. So it's 141 instead of the 172 or 175 that it could have been. And so next year, those students come back, and then it'll be part of the per A and B. So this budget will grow, because if everything else stay the same, because of those students, it'll grow at a way higher rate, because per A and B entitlement's much higher than the basic entitlement. Plus, we'll get the basic entitlement too.
So I can't really say I followed that, and maybe, but, so what will the basic entitlement line be next year? Will it still be a negative? Like this,
It's a negative only because we're using, I want to demonstrate to you the general fund as used for everything but charter schools. I wanted to pull charter schools out just to demonstrate that yes, it's part of the general fund, but it is separately funded this year based upon what we said we would do. And it's just a demonstration purposes. It is flat out part of the general fund. I'm just showing that portion has been earmarked, carved out to cover those certified staff, yeah.
again, from the community's perspective, by adding the charter schools, we did get
Yes.
additional funding in the form of additional.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Last question, you said, I think that no one-time only, so is there any interlocal funding being spent here, or no? Is there any are we projecting to draw down the interlocal? I mean, we voted to approve doing that but is that actually happening, or where?
No, yeah, because where we were planning on using that interlocal was on the elementary side in option B, so we didn't use it.
Well, I thought we also voted to do isn't that where the seed money was coming from for the charter
Yes.
schools?
Yes, so that, yeah, and that's the funding source that exists outside the general fund that's picking up the slack for those programs that the general fund basic entitlement's not picking up. For instance, you have the Teach Academy, and we're pulling in 58,000 from this basic entitlement or thereabouts, but we need more to cover those positions that's coming out of the interlocal. So we can show a program budget for each of those programs once we have staff hired that will demonstrate the amount from the interlocal and the amount from the general fund for Teach, for Connect.
Okay. So, then two comments. One, I do think some of that would be useful, just the narrow focus on the general fund when there are these other things sort of happening, and like, so overall, are we going up or down? We're going down still a little, right? Because we're having to spend from reserve savings.
Yes.
The other thing I'd like to say is just, as we go into this August's vote, I feel much better as a board member that it's not a perfunctory rubber stamp because of the efforts that happened in the spring. And although we hopefully won't be in as much crisis as we are, I do encourage the district to give us a participation role when the numbers are actually can be changed, rather than we all know in August or in next week, they just got to be passed, so.
Very cool.
I mean, next week, we just got to pass it, right? I mean,
That's right.
The train would go completely disastrous if we didn't. So I just appreciate that. I feel that this year, more than in years past, in the spring, we had some ability to affect those numbers. And I guess I don't want that to have been a one-time only thing because we were in a radical crisis. I think it could be even more. It makes me feel a lot, in the past years, I felt really sort of bitter about this vote in August because it just seemed like a lie to me. And this year, I feel like we had the input to get there where it's like, okay, I can willing to say that that's our budget because we had some voice in it in the spring and in the winter. So I just appreciate that. I hope it continues.
Any other comments or questions? Trustee Witt?
Just a couple things, and a lot of this is more clarification. So like the revenue side, pretty well set by statute, not much we can do. And you have to have a balanced budget, also statute. We all know that estimates never pan out. So on these expenses, are you trying to do them conservatively? Because like if you're off like 1%, that's $430,000 on the elementary, and it's more than $360,000 on the high school. And let's be honest, you're going to be off by more than 1%, most likely. So like when you're developing these numbers, are you trying to be as conservative as possible? What is your approach?
Yeah, initially developing the numbers, that's correct, but Mike and I weren't going to go into the budget adoption with the estimates. So we've gone to the point of the warm and fuzzy on these numbers where we're not feeling like there's going to be this big surprise. So we're already at that point where like, all right, we're in a good spot. We know that as correctly pointed out, things are going to go up, things are going to go down, but within these estimates, there isn't a glaring weakness in those estimates. So, and really, the devil in the details that supported where this landed is in the HR office, who tracked. It's not a simple matter of going, this position is not going to be there, this first grade position. Well, we know what that person made, but that's not the person that's leaving. It's like the trickle-down effect following it through. So the follow-through of getting to the actual reduction is really what HR did. So we've moved beyond our estimates of staff numbers and gone into the actuals with HR. So even though estimates are in front of a lot of these titles, we're presenting you something that we feel, even though it's estimated, we've vetted.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that the budget is almost 90% salary and benefits. Like that, like the other 10% that exists out there is going towards property and liability insurance, it's going towards maybe transportation. Like, it's not like it's buying a bunch of things. These are really big expenditures that we see over and over and over as we build out these budgets. And that's where Pat and his office, they get into that finer detail on, okay, utilities, where did we land this year? What was our expenditure? What was our budget? And how much did it go up or go down based on either usage or utility increases? And so that's the magic in all of this, is not knowing where some of those things are going to land. But we always try and build out and project for years in advance. But we come back to that same funding formula issue that we have, and it's based on your numbers. And so we see declining enrollment in the elementary, and it means we're going to receive less money, even when we get increases from the state for inflationary costs. But we have a certain amount of staffing that we're required to have. We have a certain amount of, the lights have to stay on, those kind of things. So that's probably what makes it more complicated in trying to project and knowing specifically a $5,000 swing between one employee and another because one resigned and we hired a new one, but maybe it was $5,000 more, $5,000 less. That'll be probably the bigger challenge.
Yes.
I was just going to ask Pat, this is year 5 I've asked this question, so I'll get it by year 6, I promise. The A and B counts, those will affect our revenue at the end of the day, right? Yes. And those are in October and February, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
But now you confuse me, because they will affect us this year or next year?
The following year, that's correct. Sorry.
So our revenue is set, right? Is that true? Is there anything that could change it this year?
The only thing that could change it is this, what existed in statute was the unanticipated increase in enrollment that happens in October that was pulled out by the state when COVID and ESSER funds became available, and everybody's waiting for that to get pushed back into the funding formula. So when we do our October enrollment count and, voila, we have a whole bunch of kids that come in, the anticipated enrollment increase used to be a mechanism to pull in more funds. But otherwise, yeah, we're pretty much solid on the revenue.
But, so
Yes.
that is something that can come into effect, or we're hoping for it to come into effect? Because won't our numbers go up anyway because of the new early literacy program?
No, they're already, yeah, it has to meet a certain threshold, so it's an unanticipated enrollment increase. And so usually what it amounts to is the big 8th grade class that we know is moving in, and we can't report them on our enrollment counts, and then they show up as anticipated, and we boost our budgets. You can also boost them based upon an anticipated enrollment increase, but the enrollment count affects you the following year otherwise. Yeah.
Does anything change if, now that students can actually move around and tuition dollars come with them, is there the possibility that in, say, October, 5 students from some other district move in, or does that money not show up for a year or something?
Right. It typically would not show up for a year. And what I'm talking about is the funding formula dollars that wouldn't. But it would also depend upon room and admitting the kids as out-of-district students. But the big deal is, and especially like with early literacy, is that planning and being able to, even though it's a year out, you're planning for when you can incorporate it in the revenue count. And it's especially critical when our K-5 is going down. I mean, early literacy is balancing things out, really. So it's a really important piece for us.
Any other questions or, okay, just a minute. Trustee Mercer.
And so then if like the lane movement is more than we anticipate or something, like the backstop of all this not checks bouncing is the squirreled away one-time onlys. Is that right? I mean, that's what we kind of have to avoid catastrophe? To a degree for those bigger ones. And so then the other one is the statute also has an act of God provision so that you can tap into your reserves for an act of God or something that creates a excess cost. But otherwise for most, what would be normal operations, and as Micah pointed out with the 90% deal, you could have a resignation and then a rehire of somebody way more expensive, or the opposite. And you have positions that are open and posted, they're not filled, you've budgeted them, so you have some savings. So during the course of the year, you have some of the ups and downs, and what you do is you rely upon the accounting software to kind of tell you where encumbering puts you at that point in the year, to give you kind of a temperature check, and you still have discretionary budgets primarily at the schools where you could go in and say, hey, got a
you got to freeze. We're not going to do that. Or, there's not field trips, or there's got to be some cost savings that take place. And we've never had that. But, you've seen, if there's especially this coming year where those other one-time only funds we exhausted in sped, we might be coming back saying, hey, these program costs for ELL are more than what we thought because the positions are more expensive. So you'll hear from us if that happens.
That costs one more question. And reserves, does that mean like the insurance fund or something?
No, it's the general fund reserves. It's like the only time you can tap into it is if you're in that act of God situation. And our general fund reserves are low. They're 4% ballpark. They can be 10, but there isn't a real good reason to build up your general fund reserves because you tap into them if there's an unanticipated enrollment increase. If you tap into them, if you have disputed taxes or this act of God provision. We rarely tap into them.
Okay, as I said, that was information only. Do we have any comments on this item from the public? Seeing none, let's move on to 8B, ratifying a one-year agreement with the professional specialists. Trevor Lebowski will speak to that.
Thank you. And as some of you pointed out, you did approve this at the last meeting for the professional specialist group. However, following the trades and crafts negotiations, we wanted to provide a similar increase to them as well. So the change in the dollar amount is an increase of 25 cents per hour to the members in that group.
Are there any questions on this? Trustee Mercer?
Could you just articulate who these different groups are, and in particular, the next one, the meet and confer? I just don't know what that is at all.
Sure. You ratify negotiations or collective bargaining agreements, contracts with unions. The other groups are meet and confer groups, so they're not unionized. And professional specialists is a small group. I think there's 4 members.
Could I have a motion to approve ratification? Vice Chair Afgiris, second. Trustee Witt. Any more comments from the trustees? Public comments on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the one-year agreement with the professional specialists. All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous with the members present. The next item is to approve a one-year agreement with the Building Trades and Crafts Meet and Confer Employee Group. Again,
Yep.
Mr. Lebowski.
Thank you. And again, this is a non-union group. There are electricians, our plumbers, our carpenters, and this represents a $1.35 increase as they are hourly employees. And then like every other group, every other employee, there's an increase of $33 on the district contribution for the health insurance policy.
Any questions from members of the board? Yes, Afgiris?
I'm curious in this, I know especially trades are very competitive for hiring. Are we at a level with these folks that are competitive for the market?
We are, yep. That's part of the negotiation, or the meet and confer, I should say. And Burley McWilliams does a good job keeping track of that. I'm sure you can find a higher paid position, but when you look at the full package of what the district offers in terms of the retirement contributions, the insurance contributions, the salary, the work schedule, all those sorts of things, that's why we meet with these groups. It's not really negotiated when they're not a union, but we still meet with them, we listen to them, we talk about their handbooks and other things that might impact their work environment.
Any other questions? Could I have a board motion to approve the one-year agreement with the MCPS Building Trades and Crafts Group? Vice Chair Afgaris? Second, just a minute. Hayes, Trustee Hayes, thank you. Any final trustee comments? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, can we vote to approve the one-year agreement? All in favor, raise your hands. Unanimous with those present. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. It is now 7 minutes to 7. Adjourned.